Put your hands together for Ben Browder.
Because I realized sitting at the back of Billy's panel that, if you're 2 rows back, you can't see anything. We don't really need this unless we're recording.
Are we recording? Yeah.
No, we're
No,
good.
we don't need this. Thanks for having me. It's been a great weekend. This is the survivor group. But 3 days and we're almost done. It's time to go to the pub, right?
The rest are zombies.
The zombies?
Yeah, the rest are zombies. We're the survivors.
Yeah, well, there were a lot of zombies at the beginning of the week. There's more now. So I don't know if I can follow Billy for those. He's awesome. It's like I wanted to ask questions. It was like I would sit down and ask questions. Well, there's a story for that. The way I say theater is I didn't grow up saying it. Right. When I was in college and I was playing American football, and I was doing plays in the spring, but I played football the rest of the year. And the jock world and the theater world did not sort of combine, and they were literally at the opposite ends of campus. And I was, yeah, and it's pretty much like that. But this is worse because it's university. I'm there on football scholarship, right? So they kind of own your ass. In fact, they do own your ass. It's your job to play football. And I was doing plays, and the theater folks didn't really know what to make of me. But the football coaches were even more frightened by the prospect. I got called into my coaching office. One of them called me in, and he goes, Ben? And this guy's he's a beautiful redneck. But he's a complete redneck. He's just, Ben, some of the fellas here are a little concerned about the time you're spending on the other side of campus. Like, what are you talking about, guys? Well, you're over there in that theater. You're not going to get lucky with that, right? Theater, but that's how I learned it was the theater. But you're spending time in the theater, and we're a little concerned, because, we ain't wearing no clothes in the locker room, and you're in the theater, so the fellas are a little concerned about you. Like, what do you mean they're concerned about you, guys? Well, you're in the theater. Apparently they were a little concerned about my orientation. I played inside linebacker. So I was basically like a Terminator. I was the guy that's supposed to kill people. And they were a little concerned, because the first time my position coach saw me, I was in a dress. With a big blonde wig on. and in fact, I saw him a few years ago, and he said, the first time I saw you, you were in a dress. With a big blonde wig on, and I thought, this can't be a football player. But if you try it 5 times, theater. See, it's not getting anywhere. So like when he does the Billy thing and you just go, theater. And then it starts to change to theater. You ain't what? Theater. Anyway. Yeah, I don't say it nearly.
How long did you keep the football game?
I played till I was 22, and then that was the end of my capacity. Yeah, that was the end of it because it was. I've got my son now is playing in high school, and he's in the middle of the season, so I missed the last game. Well, the last game. I'll see the game when I get back, and now I missed the last few games. But he called me every day at the end of practice to talk about football. Dad, you can't believe what happened in practice today. And his voice is getting deeper than mine now, and he's 6'5". But he's calling me up to talk about the football. Dad, yeah, we did this and that, and then the game. And literally for 2 hours at the end of every practice, he has to talk about it and talk about it. And I'm like, oh man. He is obsessed. And in order to play that game, you have to be obsessed. You really, at a certain point, by the time you're, in the States, by the time you're, say, 17, 18 years old, you're down to you're down to a rather high level of football. And if you're not obsessed with it, you don't just love doing it, you're not going to play past the age of 18.
Do you not have sort of a social second grade, third grade, fourth grade kind?
Yeah, no, there's youth football and.
No, as an adult, like we have.
You mean a second or third degree concussion?
No.
I had a lot of those.
The football that's still.
No, there's a very few insane people that play club football, but it's. The discussion, everybody looks at American football and goes, if you're familiar with rugby and you grow up with that, you look at it and you go, oh, well, that's a game for sissies. They have those pads on. Every guy that played my position while I was there had surgery in college. In 4 years, every single one of us, and there was probably 10 guys. They all had surgery. I had surgery. Everybody had surgery. My roommates, I had 3 of them. They all had surgery of one type or another. So it's knees, shoulders, necks, everything. The average career in American football in the pros is 3 years because the body can't handle it, and they get so big and so fast. It's just And so the good thing about it was, and which is where I kind of went with my son as we were going through this. I went, it's good that you're learning this, that you're learning how to be obsessed, that you're learning how to endure. Because it is a game of endurance. Because in the real world, at least for, if you're going to be an actor, you have to be obsessed. You have to be obsessed with the craft. You have to be obsessed with getting jobs. You have to be obsessed to stay in the business at a certain point. Because otherwise you just go, unless you're exceptionally lucky. Look at Billy, who's here before me. Look at that career. And we're of a similar age, and we have kids and everything else, and you go, well, how come I haven't seen Billy in everything? He's fucking brilliant. He's brilliant, and you sit here listening to him, and you go, not only is he a good actor, he's an intelligent man. He's quick-minded, he's witty, he's personable in every single way. Why is he not on the screen all the time? And you realize that when I see someone like Billy, you realize it's a really difficult business, and to raise a family and do all that. So you have to be obsessed. And that's probably the best way to find a job and a career that you're going to love doing, to go through life. So I love seeing that my son is obsessed with this thing, and he's enduring this stuff. Not so that he plays football, but so that he learns that lesson at 16, 17, that it takes sacrifice and it takes toil to do well, and hopefully to succeed. That's interesting. And so the crossover for me between sports and this picture, I guess.
I think you pick up celebrities.
All right. He did before 5:30. Yeah, but to understand that at an early age, that it's going to help you in life. It's not about that immediacy, but not those lessons. And so for football or sports in general, that crossover between being an actor and being an athlete feels to me to be the most natural thing in the world. Yet those worlds, the artistic world and the sporting world, somehow think that they're very different. And they're not, because the greatest sportsmen, the greatest athletes are incredibly creative. And that's what they'll say about it. Oh, they just created, they reinvent the game, right? And it's a very creative process. When I was playing football, I was telling little stories to myself the whole time. I was convincing myself that I was this monstrous individual. I was playing a role. When I was playing football, I had a role, and I used to keep count of the guys I sent to the hospital. That's what I was doing. I was playing a role. I wasn't like that in real life. I worked as a bouncer, but that was stopping fight. But I wasn't a violent person. But on the football field, I was this violent person that the crossover to me always seems natural, and I couldn't understand really because I'd been doing theater since I was I've been doing theater since I was like 12 or 13 years old, and I couldn't understand why these two worlds didn't understand that you're two sides of the same coin. It's performance. But, that was long-winded guy. Let's have a conversation. Somebody ask a question.
Ben, you were saying that, to be in the industry, you have to be driven through sport, but also
I use the word obsessed.
obsessed.
Yeah.
But they also said that there has to be an element of good fortune involved in that.
Yeah, yeah.
What are some of the good fortune, preparation meets opportunity kind of moments for you?
I've been lucky for a very long time. If I look at the good things in my life, I for the most part attribute them to being lucky, whether it be my wife, my kids, my career, the places that I've been. There seems to be an element of luck in all of the good things that have happened, at least from my perspective. When I was young, I had a friend whose mom was a talent agent, and so I was doing commercials starting in 1970. So I was in front of a camera when I was 6 years old, on and off. And then I had another friend who, come on in, we're just having a conversation. And I had a friend when I was 13 who was in the theater. And he said I needed to take a theater class with him, so I did that, and I started doing plays. Right? So I was doing plays from 13, 14, 15. I was still doing sports at the same time. But I would have never done a play. It's not what jocks do in the South. It's not what manly men do. And then I went to a college, a university, great university, but it was a small university, and they had a small theater department. And I went over to audition for the spring play because it seemed like a good idea. And I was incredibly lucky because it wasn't one of these programs that only used their majors in roles. So I went over, and I'd done South Pacific in summer theater before, when I was in high school. And they were doing South Pacific, so I already knew the play, and I knew which part I wanted to play. I tried to. And I went over, and they were surprised that there was a football player auditioning in the school. That's insane. They've never had a football player on this side of campus, much less a linebacker. And so I walked in, and it was just dumb luck. And they said, so you'll take any role? And I said, no, I want to play with the girls. And they went, or cable. It was in South Pacific. So I listed, the two leads I thought I could play. And it was one of these directors that went, yeah, sure, this will be really interesting. Probably as much as anything else, so I did the play. And then when I was finishing college, I signed up to take an English class in Shakespeare. Because as my son has discovered, poetry and Shakespeare works with chicks. Or at least it broadens the net, if you're tired of cheerleaders, write a little poetry. And so I was going to take Shakespeare, and these girls came up and said, we need another guy for an acting styles class. Well, I've never taken an acting class. I've just done it as a kind of vocation. I made money as a kid making commercials. I'd done it from when I was little, and I had not considered acting as a career. But these girls bodily dragged me, and made me change my course and take this acting styles class. Well, I didn't know what acting styles was, really. But we were doing Shakespeare, and members of the RSC were on tour, and they would come in, and so they had a play that they would produce with like 6, 7 actors. They did a series of plays, but we were doing scene work with members of the RSC. Well, and if you're I'm in South Carolina at this point, but if you're in South Carolina, and you got the RSC there, and I'm doing this scene, and I was working with the girl who was the lead in The French Lieutenant's Woman. And I was looking at this girl, and she had like purple eyes. I'd never seen eyes like this. And so I fell in lust with acting at that moment. And we did this scene, with acting. I mean, we did this scene from Henry V. And it was just, I'd never experienced anything like this. And I came off stage, and then one of the members of the RSC got up, and he did the scene with, one of the girls in the class, and I looked at what he did, and we talked about it afterwards, and he said, oh no, what you did was better. And I was like, no, you're right. No, he said, you did a better job than I did on that scene. I was like, no, man. And so I went, well, you know what, let's go for a beer, right? So I took members of the RSC, a couple of blokes, I took them to a football party. So we've got kegs of beer, and I'm plying them with, just free beer. They're like, free beer, they're actors, yeah. So we were drinking beer, and I was sitting there with them, and this was the end of the week, and I'd seen their productions, and I asked them, I said, do you think I could make a living doing this? And they said, yeah, sure you can. And I went, okay. I withdrew my application from the Air Force. I was going to OCS school to fly. So I withdrew my application for that. I was going to be a pilot. Not going to be a pilot, not going to be an actor. I'm going to pretend to be something for a living. And that's what I did. And so I went out, and the summer afterwards I was doing, I went and got a job as an intern in a small summer theater at a community college. I got paid $80 a week. I built sets. I was singing and dancing in the chorus. And it's mostly college-age people doing it. And if, like one or two people that may have their equity card. So I was doing that. I'm singing and dancing and playing bit parts. I'm playing like 5 roles and everything there. I'm doing Bye Bye Birdie, dancing in the chorus. And one of the guys in the dressing room had an application for RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. I was asked. And I don't know what's that, because it was unusual. It's like, this is just an unusual looking piece of paper. And he said, oh, it's an application for RADA. I said, what's RADA? It's the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. So I go, oh, right, the RSC. Right, English. I said, oh, where do I get one of those? He goes, well, I'm not going to use it here. And he hands it to me. So there I am in North Carolina, South Carolina. Just by sheer luck, this guy has an application. And so I filled in the application, I sent it off, they give me a date. I go to London. I go to London on my own with my, my A to Z, the map of London and nothing else. I didn't know where I was going. I basically got off the tube in London with a backpack, and I check into this hotel, and I'm jet lagged for the first time in my life, and I went to the audition, and RADA turned me down. But while I was there, I met up with the guys that I met at the RSC. And I said, so RADA turned me down, but what are the other drama schools? And they gave me the list of drama schools. I went to every play I could go, and I looked and said, well, where did they go to school? So I took the list, and I went to every single school. And I just walked in. I said, you mind if I have a look around? And so I went into the schools, and I went in and I met the students. I literally walked in, and I saw Clive Owen, if you know who Clive is. He's a friend of mine now. But I saw Clive in a student production at RADA, and I met this girl she's famous now, and just had tea with her, and we went to the theater together, and I went to all the schools, and went, I like this one, and I grabbed the applications, filled them all out, and auditioned for like a bunch of different drama schools, and got in. But Central was the one that I went to in London. And it's this chain of events. So then I go to Central. So I got into Central, I go to Central, I meet my wife in Central. I marry my wife while I'm in Central. She's the one, she was in a play in the West End that was transferred to Broadway. I got in that play because I had been the last play I did at Central, Judi Dench, came to school. She's a graduate of Central. A lot of great actors came out of the school at that period of time. And it was really the one I wanted to go to if I couldn't go to RADA, right? And so I went to, Judy came to talk to us, right? And so she's talking to the students, and she's, having this conversation and talking about her time at Central and what she's doing, and she's directing now. She's directing Kenneth Branagh. And is Judy fucking gay? And the English being polite as they are, she's talking about directing, and I'm the loud American, and I'm sitting at the back, and we're taking questions, just like this, and I raise my hand, and I say, excuse me, do you think you'd be interested in directing here? And she stopped, she looked at me and went, I think that'd be fun. And so she directed my last show. And Peter Hall, who was her director at the National, was directing the show that I played with her. So she had words with Peter and said, you're transferring to Broadway, you need to see this kid, because that was my last show. and she's just a wonderful lady. I mean, 3 years afterwards, I'd gone in to see her backstage, and she was like, "Come on in," and I was like, "Judy, look at that." So that's how I ended up, going there, and I went there, and I'm,
So you didn't go to
agency
Dan's
and
mom?
everything. No, I mean, obviously there's probably bad luck somewhere, but it's a chain of events to which, when it only, maybe I'm like rewriting history and just seeing the threads. I'm not going to imply meaning, but when you look at, your life and go, wow, if I had turned left instead of right. And that's luck in large part. I know people believe they make their own luck, but I believe that I'm lucky. My wife, when we were having discussions and you're struggling and you can't make your rent, I literally had been to the point a number of times where we have no money. I had no money and 2 kids. 0 money. I could not pay my rent. It was Christmas. I mean, Christmas, and I've got 2 babies, 1 3 and another baby in nappies, and we were visiting her parents who were living in France at the time, had no money. And I'm thinking, it's Christmas, I have 2 kids, no money, I can't pay my rent when I get back to LA. There's no way, I can't. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've got to prioritize. I'm a month behind in the rent already, there's no money. And I got a call the day after Christmas saying, "Oh, you've got a TV movie when you get back that I had an audition for." And if I hadn't gotten that, I wouldn't have made it the next 3 months in the business. I would have had to make that decision. I got to go get a job in advertising or something. I got to get a real job. I couldn't have made it. A real job, yeah, selling things, vacuum cleaners, whatever, whatever, I gotta go do that. If I hadn't gotten that, which I had nothing to do with, I wouldn't have made it to June at all, which is when I got Farscape. And that's just how life is, and so, I admire these people that have bludgeoned and fought their way and achieved stuff, surely through genius and hard work. And I feel like I've worked hard, and I've taken chances, but there's just so much luck involved. And just to be sitting here today, I didn't plan this. How could I plan this? I was just spent 3 days in New Zealand meeting really cool people and having a great time and getting all sorts of attention. These are basically the 3 days out of my life where people listen to me. I'm going to go home and I'll get back to normal where nobody listens to me. Or laugh at me, which is awesome. I just have to remind myself on the plane on the way home. It's like, shut up, because no one cares.
What was the movie?
It was a TV movie that it had Josie Bissett, who was off 90210. It had John Corbett and some other folks, and it was just a really bad TV movie where the director quit 2 weeks into production, and I played a pilot.
Countdown.
The job, yes. I didn't even know what the title of it was. It changed.
On Fire.
Yeah, Skies on Fire. I did a couple of fiery skies. So it's interesting to see how those things happen. Yes.
Was there much difference going from a show that had lots of puppets and mechanics to something like Stargate?
Yeah. It was a different show, and Stargate had been going on for 8 years before I got there. So their routine was their routine, and it was difficult from the standpoint that I was used to the freewheeling way of working that we had down under, where things were changing all the time, and we were making this, and Billy was talking about how the scripts would come out and how Peter would take thousands of takes and how it was that sort of constant evolving process. That was in large part how Farscape was made. Stargate, not so much. And it was an adjustment for me to kind of adjust to that. And the cast was great. They're very talented actors. We had a great time, and I like everybody up there. But it was a different culture. So that was a bit of a transition, because I would say stuff like, can't we just move the camera? Stargate had a formula for shooting, and it was very static from my eyes, from my down under trained eyes. It was a very static style of shooting, old school style of shooting. Then I went, why are we doing this? It was done for certain technical reasons back in the day, and it wasn't necessary anymore. And since we were doing the next iteration, so it was difficult. It was sort of difficult transition. I would suggest something and be generally told no, but then occasionally I get a director who would go with it, And then God bless him, Andy Makita, one of the directors up there, was really great with that. Except when we do things like that, they would rake him over the coals for why he didn't get the coverage they were used to. And then, we would do stuff where the camera's actually moving, and not moving without a purpose, moving because, in my head, visually, I was seeing the scene would be helped by this camera movement. Where this augments the acting, this augments the scene. It's a dance. In large part, one of the greatest things that I learned on Farscape was the dance between the camera and the actor, which is what is qualitatively different in my mind between the stage and working on camera. You know where the audience is when you're on stage, so you block the blocking is done when you're rehearsing and you're blocking. You know that when you move down here, you're in this light and you're this much closer to the audience. You know that upstage it has a different effect. There is an effect which occurs by the framing on a stage, and it's different in the round or the thrust or proscenium. But as an actor, you hone a craft of, if I'm down here, it's going to mean something else, and you know that you're working with an audience that way. Whereas on camera, depending on the lens, depending on the camera movement, the camera dictates to the audience how they're going to feel about something. It's why they do those push-ins. You'll see them forever, the push-ins, or then a push-in with a zoom. There's an effect that the camera has on your performance that takes time to learn. And some actors never bother with it. They're there and they're in the hands of geniuses. And that's why film actors, in some ways, have it, if they don't learn, some do learn it. But film actors don't have to worry about that because they know that. There's a great story about Warren Beatty. Warren Beatty, when he was doing one of his early films, Warren Beatty, if you watch his performances, they're pretty monotone, right? There's not a lot of movement. He's not doing art stuff. It's real small, subtle stuff. It's really small. And there was a director who was watching a scene with Warren Beatty, and it had to be this really intense scene. And they watched it, they shot it the normal way, and they went, this is terrible. He's awful. He's flat, right? And then they just marched the camera in and shot it there, and then shot it there, and shot it there. So it got tighter and tighter and tighter until the last shot is right there, right? And that creates the tension that you need, that you're moving into the character's mind. That's the camera that creates it. The actor is not necessarily doing anything different, but the camera has such a powerful point of view on it that the camera can either help you or hurt your performance. And on Farscape, because we moved the camera so much, because it was so creative, because after every take, we would go down and sit down behind the monitors, watch the take, and go, let's do this one more time. I just want to be a little further down left. That visual side of the medium, you learn, and you learn that you're working with the camera, not, and you don't do it always, but that was one of the bag of tricks that you learn after doing something for 92 hours of television, each of which takes hundreds of hours, so thousands of hours of work, and watching it and learning it. And I got to Stargate, and they weren't doing what we had been doing, and it sort of felt like they hamstrung me a bit. They got there. I'm not complaining about it. It was just a different way of working, and from what we done at Farscape.
Did you have to interview for the Stargate, or were they just up and running?
Well, I've told the story, for those of you who haven't heard it. I did not audition for Stargate. What I did was, I met Brad Wright, who's the creator, executive producer, head writer of Stargate. I met him at a sci-fi party, and we were having a conversation. I got introduced to him, and I didn't know who he was. He kind of knew who I was, but not really. Stargate had just moved from Showtime, And I finished varsity. We're having a conversation, and he kept looking over my shoulder. He kept looking up. And I'm like, what is he looking at? And I look back, and he's like, God, that's just not fair. That is just not fair. He's looking at Trisha Helfer. In a tiny little spaghetti strap dress, right? Trisha's looking hot, and he's going, damn, that is just not fair. And I go, that's my wife. Oh, I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Oh, wait, you're fucking with me, right? Trish, are you my wife? She turns around. Hell yeah, I'm your wife. I am so sorry. Oh my God, I'm stuck with you, man. She played my wife in a movie. That's how I got started. I mean, all the Battlestar Galactica. And Trisha Helfer. I auditioned for the pilot of Hawaii 5-0. I didn't get it. One of the guys. The one they cast in Australia. Yeah, no, that's the bane of my existence is actually losing parts to Australians and Kiwis. That's pretty much. I think it's a byproduct of Hollywood's love of anything anglicized. Hollywood loves the English, love the Australians, they love the Kiwis. And part of it is just, we have a deep-seated sort of cultural inferiority being Americans.
The reference I was trying to make is that you've got the Trekkie, you've got the Hero, you've got the Battlestar Galactica. Why not have an SG-1 battle, with your own background? You'd add a bit of colour to the history of the comedy of that series.
I think I'm perfect for everything. I just can't convince everybody else about it. I just think that,
Well, what's the prospect of getting your wife on there and then you as a...
There's another possibility. She's back at college now. She's at UCLA, which is completely awesome because I get to sit in the student section at football games. I'm pretty sure that UCLA chooses its students based on photos. I was sitting right near the sorority section with my son, who was not really, his interest in college was, where's good surf, right? And he went to the UCLA football game with me. He didn't see much of the game, but he was like, his hand was on a swivel the whole time. It's like, ooh, I want to go to UCLA, Dad. Well, you better bring your grades up, boy. Well, I'm working on, getting to 6 o'clock. And then I'm supposed to go back, right? I am going to go back. I haven't signed the contract yet. I got offered while I was away. I'm going to go do a horror film in Louisiana. I don't think about it. I just... No, I didn't. I don't love horror films. I like a good horror film. I mean, I admit it, I watched Cabin in the Woods about 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
It's clever, it's funny, it's really good. Alien is a great horror film. The Shining, Rosemary's Baby. I think good horror films are great. But I wasn't like I was going, oh yeah, I want to do a horror film. It was literally like, oh, this will be fun. This will be good fun. And I'll be able to pay the mortgage. Yeah, it is the unfortunate part is that most actors would act for free because we love what we do, and we've certainly all done it at times. But unfortunately, it's how I make my living. So it's literally like, you know what? This is good. This is great. Let's go. Let's go to work. I like working. And I certainly voluntarily took some time away from it for probably 2 years, where I literally was like, I won't work out of town. I can't, for a number of reasons. All of which had to do with family, which is more important than anything. But it's a good time for me to be away, and I'm happy to go to work or something. I don't have like scripts pouring in going, well, would you like to work with Mr. Spielberg next week? You know, that's not my life. And I know people. I know people and have friends who literally, it's like they're in that world. You know, it's like, yeah, I'm reading through scripts. I would call with the director, trying to decide whether to do it. You know, too much pressure. Yeah, I guess the universe isn't putting me in that position because I have trouble. I'd start to fall in love with the sound of my own voice. Yes.
Does whether your role is like a one-off, like the thing you did with Doctor Who or Arrow versus Farscape and Stargate, does how you set into the role change? Like, because with Farscape you knew you were on it for long one, but you just get offered like single episodes otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know how different. The actual process becomes different. When you come onto a show, the first thing you kind of have to suss out is what is the mechanics. How do they shoot? How do they like to work? Some places want to rehearse. Some places don't want to rehearse at all. Somebody wants you word perfect every time. Some places it's like, yeah, we're going to move this, we're going to change this. This line's changing. So the first thing is, okay, where have I landed and how do they do this? Which you have to suss out really quickly. As far as the role goes, I don't know that I radically changed the way I approach roles. At a certain point, it's kind of like riding a bicycle. It's like you don't think about the process. The process is something I've been doing for 40 years, right? And there was a period of time when I was studying where my process, I was literally trying to figure out a process. I would write stuff down all the time. I had copious notes about how to act. This would be good. Try this, you know. And then at a certain point, I abandoned it, and the process became what I do. And I couldn't tell you what it is. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, there's people who believe thoroughly in a methodology about acting, and sometimes they're more about their methodology than they are about the scene or the story. It's literally all about them. It's all about them. It's all about what their drama teacher or their theater teacher or their guru told them to do. This is how you do it. I don't believe that there is one way. I think everybody has a unique way to approach it. It is a craft, and there are certainly things that we do which, are craft-like, but ultimately it has to be your best guess, as to how you go about it. So it's different from the standpoint that you walk on a set and that has its own dynamic. Like when on Doctor Who, right? The three of them, Matt and his cohorts, they were so, it was like showing up to school and it's the third year and they've been together like this for 3 years. They had an internal language, they joked around all the time, and they were in a bubble. They were literally in a bubble with each other. And I was riding in the car with them. About the third day I was riding in the car back to the hotel. We were in Spain. We were riding in the car, and they're still going on, and they have these in jokes, and they're just yakking about all the same stuff. The rest of the driver, oblivious. I'm back here, oblivious. They don't even know the rest of the world exists because they're like schoolmates together, And I said, you guys have spent way too much time around each other. And Matt turned and you're right. And then they went and got another doctor. So, it's my fault, really. The 12 doctors didn't work out, it's all my fault. Which is kind of like how it is at home. So that's Any other questions?
Can you share us a Chris Judd experience where you hear from actors from Stargate about some things that Chris...
About what?
Chris Judd.
Oh, Chris Judd.
Yeah. He's been here, shared a few himself.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone who's had any experience with Chris Judd usually has a Chris Judd story.
Yeah.
Chris is a really smart guy. He's very, very bright, and he's an interesting guy. He is a man of great excess, and he is. He's a man of excesses, and I'm amazed that he's still in one piece. And it's sort of beautiful from that respect. You just sort of go, oh, there's the reason why he is as interesting as he is And to a certain degree, I think that, playing Teal'c for so long, he's a much better actor than he really was allowed to show his range as Teal'c. I mean, he did it all in small ways, but he's a great comedian. He's a very bright and funny guy. I hope eventually someone hires him and allows him greater range than he got to show as Teal'c. Not that Teal'c's not a great character, and they gave him lots of stuff. It's just that there's a lot more to him than Teal'c. Which, if you've been at a convention, you've experienced. And if you've been in a bar or a small space with them, you've
Did you enjoy your stints on Arrow and Doctor Who?
I love doing stunts. I love doing stunts. These days, doing a stunt is more like an affirmation that I haven't gotten too old yet. No, seriously, because the ground gets further away every year. You haven't experienced this yet, but some of us more mature people in the room have discovered that why is the ground so far away? Because when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, even through your teenage years, or when you're a football player, I watch football these days, and I go, no, I could never do that. You can't imagine that you would throw your body around in the ways that young athletes did. And I coach high school pole vaulters who are hurtling over bars 14, 15 feet in the air. And I know that I once done it, but I can't imagine. That's way too far up there. I even used to be looking down. You go, whoa, that's a long way down. Now I look up and go, that's a long way up. But the ground gets further away. So when you do a stunt, what used to be like, fall down, not a problem. Nowadays, I kind of look at it and go, fall down. Oh, how are they going to feel tomorrow? Am I going to get hurt? Am I going to get hurt when I hit the ground? I never thought it'd start. When I was on Farscape, and I was in my late 30s on Farscape. I was 37, I think, when I started. I was 40-something by the time I finished. I didn't think twice about any stunt. Man, throw me in there, let me go. The production company literally sent memos out to keep me from doing certain stunts. And I only didn't do 2. But one of them was jumping off the cliffs in Aruba, 120 feet into the ocean. And I was ready to go. And they literally sent a memo, and I walked up to the edge of the cliff, and they clipped a rope on me. I'm not going off. There's no camera rolling. Yeah, we've been told to do this.
Is it your wife in the studio?
And my wife would have been there. Insurance. No, it's kind of interesting. My missus doesn't really. She doesn't seem to worry about the things that I get up to. She doesn't like flying. She was a little concerned when I got to go up in an F-16 with the Thunderbirds. She was a little concerned about that. Didn't understand my joy of it. She wasn't really concerned when I went to the Arctic to live with the polar bears. And she doesn't seem to be frightened when I go out into the surf. I don't know. She's pretty good about putting. I drove a race car. She didn't like. She was more annoyed that I go do these things than worried about whether I'm going to die doing them.
I'm going to make you worried. Say, honey, you're coming with me next time.
No, she wouldn't go. She's a sensible person. She's a reasonable human being, whereas I'm a recovering adrenaholic or something.
How did you manage to get the flight?
It was through Stargate. The Air Force came up and they have a liaison that works with the Stargate bunch, and so they're there periodically to check and make sure we do it and say, hey, don't put your hat on backwards. Okay. That wasn't even my idea. I had a hat on backwards in one episode of Stargate, and it was Peter DeLuise's idea. And I went, really? I'll be all right. Okay, yeah. I'll do anything. Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's go. Jump. And the Air Force came and went, is there anything I can do for you? They went, don't put your hat on backwards. Okay. And he said, well, is there anything we can do for you? And I said, I hear you guys do like celebrity flights. I know I'm not a celebrity, but because I'm on the show, is it possible for me to go up in like a, with a pilot? And he went, I don't think it's going to happen, And then 6 months later, I was at Dallas Air Force Base with the Thunderbirds going upside down and pulling 9 Gs. And, literally, I dined off that story for ages. I was so stoked about it. I'm sitting in the back of this plane, and I've got controls. It's 2-seater F-16, single engine. and they'd already aborted one takeoff because of mechanical issues. And I'm sitting in the back of this plane, and I'm going, man, I got 2 kids. Should I really be here? And then they kicked in the afterburners. I went, yeah! And take off out of Nellis, goes straight up. Literally points the plane straight up. I mean, it's the best amusement park ride ever. Goes straight up and then turn upside down over Las Vegas. So 10,000 feet straight up and then turn upside down, and you just hang there, right? And it's just a lap belt. You know, you imagine it's like a 5-point harness like you'd have in a race car because it's really dangerous. No, it's a lap belt. So you're literally hanging from your lap belt. There's flies and dust and stuff falling into the canopy, but you're looking at Vegas upside down. And then he turns it over, we fly out over the desert, and he proceeds to do everything that aircraft is capable of doing. It was awesome.
Actually, I'm very lucky because back when we actually had an Air Force, my husband was a fighter pilot, and when they had to take the celebrities out and got forced into it, if they were not very nice people, they would turn the air conditioning up so it got quite warm in there and then do the manoeuvres and guarantee they'd puke every time.
Well, the puke rate is about probably 75 to 85%. Everybody goes up in those planes for the first time if they're not used to it. I survived it. Joe Flanagan did not.
What led you onto the Arrow set, as in casting and production?
I auditioned for the pilot. For the part John Barrowman plays.
Oh, cool.
And they chose John because he's prettier than me. No, I auditioned, and then I talked with the producers. They were Farscape fans. And we had a great meeting and great read and everything else. And I said, and they said, why are you growing that mustache? I said, because I'm going to do Doctor Who. And so they were shooting the pilot while I was shooting Doctor Who. So I'm not saying I would have beaten John Barrowman. I would have kissed him. I did. But it was, and so I guess they said, hey, let's have Ben up and let's kill him. My one great talent is death. I die like the best of them. I'm basically, I may actually secretly be a stuntman. Because it's like these old actors who are stuntmen, they've died thousands of different ways. And that maybe I missed my calling. I should have been a stuntman.
What's your favourite way to die then?
Oh. Oh, wow, what's your favorite way to die? Every death is different. They're all enjoyable in their own way. No, seriously, I'm not a big fan of being hung. I gotta say, being strung up, then hanging with a wire with the rope around your neck, that's not real good. You turn blue, your tongue sticks out. I don't like that. Radiation's not bad. You can have a slow, quiet death. That's good. Being shot is always a pretty good death, depending on where you get shot.
Not the face, not the face.
Yeah, I haven't had a whole. God, what a weird life I have. It's like you're talking about your work. I'm going, so what's your favorite way to die? Oh, I love them all. They're great.
Sean Bean's died like 23 times.
What?
Sean Bean?
What about him? He's died 23 times?
Yeah, something like that.
He's a walking spoiler.
Yeah. He's got 23 films and died in all of them, and 2 haven't come out, so you're dying in the next 2. Yeah. I don't know how many times I've died. Wow, I think I should go back and count.
I'm sure you could just Google it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone would have put it on a list.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Maybe one person.
Maybe I get to count stage deaths.
It's so far, no one really dies. So.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, partially they did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think we killed anybody and suddenly they showed back up later. I mean, they may have been in some incarnation, but it wasn't like, oh, you weren't really dead. It was like, oh, no, you're dead. And we're not regenerating you or bringing you back to life.
Did you get 2 credits and 2 paychecks for Farscape with
You know what? I was 3. I had 3 at one time. 3. The answer is no. And I thought about it too. I was like, well, wait a minute now. the interesting thing about that particular story arc, for those of you who don't know, there's a story arc in Farscape where I play the same character, but he's cloned. You know, normally at the end of the episode, you get rid of one of them or they put it back together. Well, we basically created clone John Crichton, two split off, and you have two identical John Crichtons, and then we carried the storyline through over half of the season. Yeah, and one of the reasons was a practical reason, which was we needed to give the folks in prosthetics a rest. It was, you know, we were going to kill Anthony Simcoe and Gigi and anybody who was in prosthetics on a regular basis. We were going to kill them. It was going to be the end of them, and we discovered that, you know, with we'll do this, we'll clone them, and also it gave a chance to put John and Aaron together properly. So everybody else got a break, and I was going to get every morning. And on Farscape, because of the prosthetics, you know, the prosthetics, the hours in and hours out, and it's an arduous thing. And what they finally figured out as we went through the making of it was, we'll shoot bend scenes at the beginning of the day and the end of the day. So I'm on every day, first and last, which means I have the same basic call time as the folks in prosthetics, and I'm getting out the same time they are, right? But I'm there every day, all day. And while I was playing two characters, I was kind of thinking, I wonder how this actually would be contractually, you know? All they got to do is just delineate the name. And I think they purposely never delineated the name in the script because they had done that. My agents would have said, so which character is he playing? Because they were two separate characters. And I, you know, I've tried very hard to make them develop and become different.
I think you did it brilliant. They were. You always knew which one you were talking about.
Yeah, and they became very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of an interesting arc, because you know, an interesting idea that, you know, the whole nature-nurture question comes into play is, you know, would I be what I am? But really, how quickly would I change from what I am?
Was the show Orphan Black, where she plays 9 times
Yeah.
in this?
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I'm
She
interested.
does a great job of that. Yeah. It reminded me of you.
Oh, yeah.
Doing that part.
I like to be reminded of hot chicks.
I was thinking,
When I see a hot chick, I think Ben Browder.
In the episode where you play 3, you know, the 3 evolutionary versions of Cronin,
Yep.
how long did all that makeup take?
One of them was 2.5 hours, and the full Neanderthal suit was a 4-hour makeup, and it was full. It was like, and here's what they kind of discovered is they did it. Sometimes the creature shop is working in overdrive, right? So they made this meticulous hair suit that was one piece, extended from here to there, right? And then they glued me into it, right? So I got glued into this hair suit. Well, about 3 hours after I got glued into the hair suit, I looked down at my crotch and went, there's no access. There's no zip in that suit. There was no access, right? And it's freaking hot in Sydney in the summertime in a shed. And so I'm sweating profusely. So when I was doing that part, I had to, first I had to make sure, it's one of those like like you're going on a long car ride, you better go now. But I'm in that suit for 12 hours of shooting. And I'm sweating in the suit and the headpiece, but I got to make sure I drink enough liquid, but only enough that I don't have to pee. And so it literally, part of it's like, how do I balance this out, right? It's literally like, you know, and so they're sitting there going, well, we can cut it. I go, you're not putting scissors down there? No, thank you. I'm like having breast scenes going on. You know, this is not going to happen. Just take the scalpel away. I'll pee in the suit. Which I know people on Farscape who peed in the suit. And it's like, you know, they reached that point in the day and they made that suit without access, and somehow they just didn't think about it. It's like, how did you not think about that? There was a couple of people that like ended up having to pee in the suit. And they're not in the surf where it's going to rinse out. Billy Boyd asked me, he said, do you pee in your wetsuit?
He would make it stink.
Well, we had a long discussion about his wetsuit. Apparently, it's really nasty. I just love the image of a hobbit surfing. It's so strange to me. Yeah, well, it would be stable with the big feet, but I just picture it, right? Billy Boyd in the curl. I'm really working on trying to get him to surf with me when he comes to LA. So, although apparently I heard his panel, I don't know, it might sound to be a little dangerous surfer material. But that's, I was sitting there going, yeah. I mean, that was when I fall in the surf, I go like this. I cover up because anything else, like when I was working on Farscape, I broke a rib surfing. But that's okay, because you can't see the rib, right? I got cut, my skeg cut through my wetsuit. I had, a big old slash on my leg. That's okay. It's just anything, right? But you break your pinky, and then you get cut on the chin. I'm like, oh, dude, it's people like you that make producers tell me not to surf when I'm working. And that would be awful being down here and not being able to surf.
They did that with Lord of the Rings. They said, you don't do anything dangerous during the break. They were near Queenstown, so yeah, sure. And off they went and they bungee jumping.
Yeah, they do have restrictions on the things you're supposed to do while you're working. I don't think you're supposed to ski. You're not supposed to skydive. I don't think you're supposed to ride a motorcycle. And you know what? Actors generally, at some point, ignore all that stuff, and somebody shows up and they've done something bad. But no one ever accused an actor of having common sense. If we had common sense, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. Any other questions? And nobody's after us. We can actually go a little over, but I mean, if you've got to go, feel free to go. You're not going to offend me. Don't pee in your suit while you're Go. Absolutely go. But, we're going to talk about you when you're gone. Please.
I love it when
Yeah. All right, you know what? Let's call it a day. Y'all. Have a great thank you for coming.